Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report, presented by Geico of Mobile, the first podcast to bring the local inshore, offshore, and onshore fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. This week's show is brought to us by our local Geico insurance office. Everybody knows Geico has great auto rates, but you know they also have great rates on boats, ATVs, motorcycles, and personal watercraft. Give Ron Davis a call at 251-445-0053. Not only will Ron work hard to get you the lowest premium possible, but you'll have the service you expect and can count on if you ever need to make a claim. Geico does even more than insure your valuable items. They also offer on-the-water services like towing, battery jumps, gas delivery, and you can save by bundling these services with your insurance. If you're an Alabama saltwater fisherman, support the local insurance agent who gives you the fishing report each week. Call Ron Davis, Geico agent at 251-445-0053 or visit him online at geico.com/mobile-AL. I'm Butch Theory, and I'm joined this week by Captain Richard Rutland, Cold-Blooded Fishing. How we doing today, Captain Blood?
Woo, man, just getting ready for fishing season to kick off. It's finally starting to kind of feel like spring out.
I know.
And
I feel like we're right on the verge of a lot of things.
I know. It always seems to like take much. It's like we have a couple of days where the water, where the air temperature like starts to get up into the upper 70s, you know, and we think, man, it's springtime. You know, I saw their dogwoods are blooming all over in my neighborhood and stuff right now, but it's still going to be a little while, you know. We still got a lot of shaping up to do before it's like full-fledged springtime fishing, but it's definitely on the way. I was listening to Dr. Bill on 106.5 this morning, and he was talking about how we're about to have a pretty nice little dry spell for at least the rest of this week, and it sounded like into next week, to the end of next week, we're going to have a nice little dry spell where we're not going to have a bunch of rain and cold fronts or anything like that. So that should really help, you know. I'm sure it's going to get the pollen going, which is bad news for me. I have bad allergies, but
not good.
But anywho, it's just right around the corner, you know. Golly, time just absolutely flies by, you know.
Yeah, sitting there looking at the weather, it looks like it's going to be 75, 76, 76, 70, 72. Be nice. That water temperature ought to get up, like you say.
That's right.
Get a little steady air temperature. It'll start climbing up a little bit, you would think.
Yep. We had some beautiful weather for the boat show this past weekend. Golly, I was down there Friday and Sunday.
Yep.
There's just droves of people out.
Had a great turnout.
Yeah, I'm sure Saturday was gangbusters because there was the chili cook-off was going on down there as well. So I know every time I've ever seen it when it's downtown, everybody always migrates over there to the boat show after they eat some chili.
Yeah, get lubed up a little bit, get some cold beers in you, going to go buy some stuff, spend some money.
That's right. Man, did you see anything over the boat show that blew your mind or raised your eyebrow?
Man, I was surprised at the turnout of people, honestly. Sunday, I thought, was even more busy than Saturday. It was crazy how many people were there.
Yep. I felt like I couldn't walk 10 feet without bumping into like one of my friends or a customer or you know, somebody who I do some work with or whatnot. It was, man, everybody was there for sure.
Yep, it was really, really cool. We don't get to see people very often. I mean, you at least get customers on your boat all the time. We, Joe and I don't ever get to, you know, have some FaceTime with people. And we were really, really overwhelmed and blown away and super appreciative of everybody that came up to us and shook our hands and introduced themselves. And we talked to people for 2 entire days, and it was awesome. The great feedback that we got, people, how much they enjoy the show and how much they pick off of it. And one gentleman talked to us for a while, and he said, I feel bad. He said, I feel like I'm stealing. He said, I feel like I'm stealing from you guys whenever it's just so much good information.
Talk about info. Yeah, that's funny. That's funny.
He said, I can't believe it's free. He said, I just feel like I should be paying for it. And I said, well, enjoy that.
Yeah. I tell you what I thought was really neat. And man, I saw a ton of it while I was down there, was the Stouter Built Boatworks apparel all over the place. They had a huge booth over there. I didn't get a chance to go over there and look at their booth. But man, I literally saw over a dozen people wearing Stouter Built Boat hats and T-shirts and stuff. That's like one of the most iconic things to Mobile.
Legendary.
Oh yeah, and I would just die and go to heaven to have a Stouter one day. I probably will one day. It'll probably be a mistake, but I really want one just for a little while.
Oh, it'd be fun to tinker with, anyways.
Yeah, that's what I learned how to trout fish out of when I was about 10 or 12 years old with this old pediatrician, Dr. Howard Harper, was our next door neighbor at the island, and he had a little 14 or 15 stouter. We used to go in and run out. We used to pretty much fish the bridge and learn how to fish out of one of those things. It was
nice.
pretty neat.
They're sweet. It'd be a perfect little river runner boat. I'd love to have one.
Oh yeah.
What else, man? What else? You see the slick lure presentations are awesome. Everybody, all those were awesome turnouts, man. We did video those. We had several requests for video. We did the best we could. We're gonna try and put something together with it. We're not AV specialists, obviously, but we'll see what we can do. The stuff that we got looks pretty good, so hopefully we can put something out for you guys to be able to put those on the air as well. That'd be cool.
Yeah. I saw some of the video that you and Joe sent me of my lure action through the water, man. It was really neat to really see what it's actually doing down there. You're fishing in bathtub water, well, you're throwing your lure through bathtub water.
Yeah.
We don't have any of that kind of water here and in Alabama, not that clear anyway. And so you really see that nice action, how that thing just it looks like it's flying through the water.
Mm-hmm. Did it look like what you thought it would look like?
To an extent. I tell you, like when I was up on the
platform or whatever,
on the tank throwing it, it looked like kind of from that angle, kind of looked like what I thought it looked. But when I saw it from the side angle, the rise and fall of it is what really surprised me. You know, like when I do my I really put a ton of action on it. I did my big twitches and I would kind of reeling the lure at me a little bit. It would fall like 3 or 4 feet and then twitch and it comes up and falls 3 or 4 feet in a short amount of time. And it's always kind of flying and it's always kind of coming straight at you, you know, no matter what. As soon as that's something I kind of said in the in my seminar was it's always moving. It's always kind of constantly like just slowly sinking and coming straight at you. So you always got to be ready. You're going to know when you're going to get a bite out of one. Yeah,
it was pretty cool. The movement on yours was nuts.
Yeah, it'll be really neat to see what Bobcats looks like, and then Patrick as well, because both those guys are highly successful with it as well. Yeah. I tell you what, the other really exciting thing about the slick for me was so he's doing some of these new painted airbrush lures. He had one up there. I didn't want to ask Joey for too much, but he has one. You know, I really wanted to get my hands on one. I'm gonna text him about it this week. But he's got one he's calling Godzilla.
I like that one too.
I mean, Godzilla. Think about fishing with a lure called Godzilla, man.
That's a big name to live up to.
Yeah. But it's kind of got like that black and orange with this real like lime to chartreuse green tail, man. Golly, it looks like a really, really sexy lure. I can't wait to get my hands on one of those.
Yeah, it did. I like those too. I like that one that kind of looked like a little redfish too.
Oh yeah, you talking about the one that kind of had the little scales on there? Yeah. That one.
I forget what he called that one. Had a little spot on it.
Yep. Yeah. Like kind of almost, and the spot that I saw in there kind of makes sense because it almost looks like a pogie at times. That pogies always have that one little spot on their side. Yep. So it can kind of, I think it looks, you're imitating a mullet with it, but I definitely think it could take on the look of a pogie
for sure.
as well. So
definitely could,
because it's so tall, you know, it's kind of wide from the belly to the back, it's kind of wide. So I think it could definitely take on the look of that.
For sure.
But anywho.
All right,
great boat show.
It was, man. We had a good time. And again, I really, really thank you guys for coming up and hanging out with us and talking to us and sharing your stories and how much is helping y'all. That was pretty awesome.
Yep. I ran into a lot of listeners as well while I was out there. Well, cool. I guess we got an inshore report, onshore report. I guess we're going to have 2 inshore reports and then an onshore report today.
Man, I hit up everyone from, everybody that usually contributes from Orange Beach to Dauphin Island. And it seems like everybody's kind of getting off the hill, kind of getting shipyard work done. Really not much happening offshore. Some of those guys over to the west, on the east lumps and all that, they're kind of picking a few tuna here and there, chunking, like Veche said last week. And that kind of seems to be still the trend. There was a bunch of people leaving out today and tomorrow. So hopefully next week we'll have a really good offshore report. Keep your fingers crossed for that. But yeah, I'm going to.
Those are the same things I'm hearing as well, is that some guys are doing really good over on the east lump off of Louisiana and the old horseshoe rig area. Some guys are catching some giants out there right now, 160, 180 pound class fish in the past 2 weeks or so. And then also the wahoo bite's been good as well over that direction. So
it's about that time too. Yeah, we'll be talking about all that pretty soon, I would think. Hopefully this weekend we'll get some good intel.
Yeah, it looks like we got a really good stretch of weather. Like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It looks like the weather's really supposed to straighten out, sea state wise anyway. And some guys are going to get offshore and probably wreck them if I had to guess.
I would think so as well. So hopefully we'll y'all stay tuned for that. Hopefully we'll get some good stuff next week. So yeah, we're gonna do we'll get Scott Kennedy to do a kayak and kind of an Orange Beach Gulf Shores inshore report / kayak report. Let's go down there and see what old Scott's up to.
All right, what you say, Captain Scott? You guys doing good down there today?
I tell you, it is. Today was good, and the whole past few days has been real nice. Especially the weather. Things are warming up. The water, you can step in the water, launching your kayak, and not freeze your toes off. So things are looking good over here.
Nice,
man. That time change must have brought some nice weather along, huh?
I tell you, it is nice. It allows us to sleep in a little bit more. You get some extra hours in the evenings, and I tell you, it's nice being able to launch, later in the morning around 6:30, 6:45, something like that, and not having to stress yourself getting out of bed real early.
Yeah, sleep's at a premium when you do what we do for a living. You know what I mean? You get to sleep in an extra hour or something like that. Early season, man, you better soak that stuff up in a hurry.
Yep, every little bit counts. That is no doubt about that.
This time change and everything, and you're trying to get out there. Are you guys getting out there kind of, pretty dark before the sun rises?
Yeah, so we've been launching, like I said, 6:30, 6:40, something like that. And with especially the past 2 days, we've had some real thick cloud cover, and it is pretty dark. It is definitely, you definitely want to make sure you have a good light while you're going out there. And for these kayaks, as long as you have a good, big, tall 360 degree visible light, that's what the law requires us to keep on there. And that definitely is a very, very smart move because, a lot of the places we fish in the kayaks, you're fairly close to the boat launches and stuff. So you are seeing a good bit of boat traffic. So having a light is definitely very important right now.
Man, I think I would try and look like a UFO out there if I was on a kayak before dark.
I tell you, there's some guys. I've seen guys that have put those LED strip lights, and they'll run them, have them on the inside of their kayaks. They'll have the white LED strips on the outside. And just like you said, they can definitely be seen from a ways away.
I know I've run across a couple of kayakers early morning like that with no lights on or not any kind of navigation.
That is so dangerous, man.
Indicator, and it is dangerous. And more than anything, the only reason I really get irritated about it because I'm really throwing a big wake on these guys because I can't see them. Because I always, if you see me on the water and there's a kayak within, I would say like 200-300 feet of me or whatever, I'm always going to slow down and idle, not throw a giant wake on you guys because I know that's it's not you look at you guys. You look like you're on a surfboard. You know what I mean? You can just fall, get washed in the water, and so I always try to slow down and whatnot. And that's the only reason I kind of get irritated whenever they don't have the lights on in the morning, is just because I don't want to throw a big giant wake on you.
Help me help you.
Yeah. And the other thing we're going to start dealing with a lot here in the near future is fog. We're going to have a lot of fog in the near future. And so that's going to be another safety hazard right there. So it's good to hear that you're going out of your way to make sure you got the right lights on.
Definitely. And one thing you can do too that I've learned that helps out a lot, even after the sun rises up, I keep a flag on the same pole that I keep my light on.
Yeah.
And when you're fishing these kind of marshy areas, being in these kayaks, if you're sitting down on the kayak itself, you're not visible coming around these blind bends
for sure.
And stuff. So
that's a great point.
So throwing a big, an orange safety flag or something on there that sticks up a little bit, that's definitely something you probably want to keep on there too.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. I know the feeling that you guys have when you're in that little bitty boat, in conditions like that. I always feel that way when I'm fishing up in the Delta, like in the fall, especially on the foggy days. Because you can't hear, the only thing you can hear up there is like these bass boats up there going 108 miles an hour. You know what I mean? And I don't know how the bass guys do that. How they'll go, run wide open up there in the fog. But I'm like a nervous wreck, whenever you start hearing that kind of stuff. And I'm sure y'all are the same way when y'all hear like a little John boat or, 108 miles an hour. You're like, oh my God, I'm going to or inshore boat, bay boat, something like that coming along, you're probably like a nervous wreck. Like, oh man, I wonder if this guy's going to see me, or is he going to come around this corner going 100 miles an hour? What am I going to do?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely, it definitely increases that clinch factor when you hear an engine coming at you.
All right. Well, now that we got our safety talk out of the way, right. We're nice and safe, man. Tell us about some fish, man. You been catching some fish or what?
I tell you, it's been nice. We've been able to kind of step away from the sheephead a little bit this week, and we're starting to see a lot of good redfish showing up in some of these shallow water flats. And I tell you, I don't think there's anything I enjoy more than catching redfish in shallow water and throwing topwaters at them. I mean, it is probably one of the most exciting things you can experience inshore.
Heck yeah, feels like a cinder block fell out of the sky on your lure, huh?
Oh yeah, it's so cool. You know, the mouth is on the bottom of their face, so 9 times out of 10, these redfish get above your bait and come down on it. So you know, you'll either see that big head weight come charging your bait, or you know, a lot of times you actually see the redfish's head as a whole, and it's just they are not afraid to put all their effort into smashing something on the top.
Before we get into like maybe some of the conditions or areas that you're looking for to find these guys, you talk about top water. I think about top water with a redfish. It's kind of a different deal to me than catching trout on a redfish. You know, with trout, I'm always kind of trying to pause it, or if I see a little swirl on my lure, I want to make a pause or something like that, and then work it a little bit, pause it again, work all these pauses in. For me, redfish, it's hard for them to keep up with it like a trout. So I always try to just kind of keep on working it, even if they do miss it 2 or 3 times, I'll just keep on slowly working it there and try to keep it in the strike zone. They usually kind of can find it. Is that the same thing you noticed down there working at top water?
Yeah, definitely. You know, the biggest difference I do between the redfish and the trout, I don't work it near as fast when I'm working it for the redfish. You know, I'll give it, you hear a lot of guys talking about giving it a good hard plunge and really letting it, you know, walk side to side. And I'll do that, you know, maybe sometimes even go up until, you know, a second in between each twitch. And just like you said, though, I try not to stop it at all, especially when they hit it. Because I've noticed when you pause it after they've hit it, a lot of times they just kind of lose interest in it. But if you just kind of keep that steady retrieve, you know, they'll like you said, they're going to hit it a few times, a lot of times before they actually get a hold of it. But it adds to the excitement, you know, watching this fish blow up on it, wake it, doing all its things around it. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm getting giddy talking about it.
Yep. That's something I think like when I think redfish, I think that as far as like their feeding how they feed, how they forage, they're not using their eyeballs a whole lot all the time. You know, they use a lot of, like you said, their mouth is on the bottom of their head, and they're usually kind of down in the dirt, down in the mud or the sand or something. So I don't think they're using their eyes anything near like what a trout does. So you kind of got to change your mindset there a little bit, I feel like, when you're fishing topwater. You throwing topwater at these guys all day long right now, or is it just an early morning thing, or what's the deal with that?
I've been kind of letting the fish decide it for me. You know, it's been a little bit different each day. Like this morning, we set down the top waters a little bit early. Yesterday, we threw top water up until, 10:30 in the morning. But kind of what I like to look for is if I start getting some fish trailing it, and they, not necessarily blowing up on it, if they just kind of slurp it, or if you can see them behind it, but they won't commit, that's usually when I'll go to something a little bit subsurface, maybe a mirrodine or, some kind of suspending twitch bait. And I've found if they won't commit fully to a topwater, if you get one of those little floating twitch baits that sits, 6 inches below the water, that usually makes all the difference for us.
I think last time we talked to you, Scott, you had just, got a package of slick lures, and you were trying to trying to figure those out some. Made any headway?
Oh yeah, I've still been using them a lot for the trout. I tell you, I haven't busted them out for the redfish yet, but that's definitely going to be in my arsenal the next few days. It's tough to pull off that top water, and then a mirror dine.
Sure.
Those are by far my 2 favorite baits. So I've been sticking to my confidence lures past week.
Doubt.
Yeah, well,
everything.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, me and Captain Bobby, we fished in a tournament last weekend. It was a trout tournament, but it had a redfish category. We didn't do very good at all on the trout side of it, but we won redfish, and we probably caught, I think, maybe 6 or 7 reds, and it was all on slick lure. The good colors for me were the pink with the chartreuse tail, and then what he's calling cold night, which is the cool beans color slick with the chartreuse tail on there. Those 2 colors were really good for us, and of course pearl and chartreuse as well. But they were hot on it. There was a bunch. I think we were on a really big school of fish. It'd been amazing to see what we had done if we were actually trying to catch the redfish. We're trying to trout fish and catching the reds by accident. But man, they were crushing it.
Yeah, that's what I picked up. I picked up a pack of those cool beans after I talked to y'all last, and that is as far as the trout we've been catching. That's been my go-to after talking to y'all. I built up some good confidence in that color.
That's cool. What kind of habitat are you catching these fish around right now?
So I've been focusing mainly on grass flats. It's still down at our end of the bay. We've been dealing with a lot of the fresh water in Mobile Bay. So been having to venture further east. And, the further east you get, the more these good lush grass beds you'll find. And I've just kind of been, early in the morning, I'll fish these grass beds that are, 1 foot, 2 foot deep. Then kind of as the sun's coming up throughout the morning, I'll start fishing the ledges near them. And, but it seems like finding the thickest grass you can find in an area has been where most of them have been holding out at.
With trout and reds?
We've been picking up a few trout on the grass flats, but I tell you, it's not near as many as we've still been catching in the rivers. It's been mostly a redfish party out there on the grass.
That's kind of typical for this time of year. I feel like as we kind of get closer and closer to, I guess, full-fledged spring, redfish always seem to be there before the trout do in a lot of the areas that I like to fish. So that seems about, I guess, right on track for having a good spring, in my opinion.
I tell you, I'm pumped up. I think we're going to have a pretty good spring year of spring fishing this year.
Yeah, that's if the dirty water ever moves out of the Mobile Bay area, man.
That's what I was just about to say, man.
I don't know if anybody noticed or not, but Barry Steam Plant was like falling, and it got to about 11 feet. We got a lot of rain in the middle of the last week, like way upstate of Alabama, and Barry Steam Plant bottomed out and is coming back up. I think it's at 12.7 this morning, forecasted to go to like 13 something, and kind of crest and hold for it's never going to end, man. Golly.
It's got to at some point. It's got to.
Yeah, it's crazy. I went and checked some of my spots down here in the South Bay. I did a short trip just kind of scouting. And some of these, tidal creeks that I fish a lot that are normally very, very salty waters. As far back as you can get in them, it's as fresh as it can be. It's crazy.
Well, so at least the one thing I can say is consider yourself lucky you have the water that you have to go fishing.
Right.
Because, man, for a poor guy like me, man, over here on the western shore of Mobile Bay and Mississippi Sound, man, there's no hope in our future right now for any clean water. So at least you have something to be positive about over there.
Yeah, certainly.
I was talking to a guy at the boat show, actually. I think it was after Patrick's slick lure demonstration on Saturday. He was saying that he has some kind of mechanism to test water clarity down. He has like a piece of angle iron with a GoPro mounted on it with a little lure like 8 inches away. And he drops that down so he can see the clarity of the water. And he said,
no kidding.
Yeah. And he said, Mobile River is absolutely zero. You think you get down 15 or 20 feet, it's going to clear up a little bit. He said on the bottom at 40 feet, it was black.
Golly.
Isn't that crazy?
Yep. That's unreal.
Good grief.
So you said you guys were finding some trout over there too, Scott. Tell us a little bit about those. Anything different? Anything different as far as?
No, we've been kind of following, the same pattern as the past month or so. We're just fishing these, inland rivers, some of these tide fed rivers, just kind of the same thing, trying to find the deeper holes and the bends and stuff, working those holes. The biggest difference I've noticed in the trout over the past week is instead of having to fish, all the way at the bottom of these deep troughs and stuff, we've still been finding them in the troughs, but they're hanging a little bit shallower. So instead of having to work, a grub or something, a jig head on the bottom, we've been able to work some lipped jerk baits and stuff, something to get it down, just 2 or 3 feet. It's like they're moving up in the water column, but they're still hanging out kind of in the same areas.
Yeah, good deal. Well, you mentioned triggerfish. You've been catching some triggerfish from the kayak?
I tell you, man, that is another great thing about living in Baldwin County. Here in Alabama, you do have to go out a ways to find the triggerfish. I think the closest I've found them here in my kayak is about 3 miles. But the good thing is you can make a short drive across the Florida line, and you've got, Pensacola Beach, Navarre Beach. And I've mentioned it before, but they really cater to kayakers over there. And one thing they actually did last year is they put out a ton of reef modules for, they kind of start about 1.5 miles, 2 miles out, and you can find some out into 3 miles. But over there you go out 1.5 miles and you're in 50, 60 feet of water, and there is no shortage of triggerfish. There is. It is very easy to go over there and get your whopping limit of one, and there's pretty sizable ones with it too.
That's a lot of paddling for 2 fillets, Cap.
Well, I tell you, the good thing, you can kind of troll while you're on the way out there. And
True.
This past week, week and a half, there's been a lot of blackfin tuna being caught. I mean, it's enough to make me wonder if I shouldn't make a ride over there real fast. But it's I haven't been lucky enough to find one yet myself, but there's plenty of guys catching them. It seems like any day that there's been, a calm enough day for a kayaker to get out there, I've seen somebody post into Facebook that they got him a blackfin tuna, and that's, out of a kayak, that's kind
wild.
of top dog. That's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, that seems like you could really make a nice trip out of something like that, because I just know typically this time of year, bull red fishing's always really good out on the beaches this time of year. So you think about catching if you could go pull it off, catch a blackfin tuna, catch a triggerfish, and then maybe catch a bull red towards the afternoon or something like that. I can't think of what else would be species wise that you might have a shot at that you could do something with, man. That'd be
Pompano are showing up.
Yep.
Pompano are coming along as well. So you're not far. Yeah, you're not far away from having a banner day there if you talk about those couple of species.
Kayak slam.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, exactly. And then, of course, as things warm up, you'll start to see the kings show up. It's not uncommon to go over there and catch mahi. You get the cobia. In the fall, they get sailfish. So, I mean, it's, as far as a kayaker, that's as close to true offshore fishing as you can get.
Heck yeah.
All right, man. We're going to get that kayak tip from you before we let you go. And this week's kayak tip is brought to us by MDH Foundation Repair. If your home is experiencing foundation problems, MDH Foundation Repair has the best solutions to fix it right and fix it now. The problems you see are only going to get worse, so don't deal with inefficient, unqualified, and pushy salesmen trying to sell you overpriced foundation repair products. The professionals at MDH Foundation will ensure you have a remarkable experience from the first meeting to the finished product. MDH Foundation Repair is redefining the construction industry and protect your most important asset, your home. Check them out at mdhfoundationrepair.com. What do you think for a tip this week, Scott?
I'll tell you, my tip for the week is going to kind of touch back on fishing these redfish in the shallow flats. One thing you want to be very, very cautious of and be very careful is be as quiet as you can be when you're getting on these flats. If you're real quiet, not banging the side of your boat, not hooping and hollering, listening to loud music or anything, these redfish will let you get within feet of them. And especially, these low light conditions, the kayaks don't really displace a whole lot of water, so they don't feel you coming. And if you're quiet, I mean, you can get, like this morning, for instance, we got out there right at daybreak. It was slick, calm glass out there. And we pulled up on the flat and we could see tailors. I mean, this first time I've seen tailing redfish in a long time. And there was a few of them we got within, 5 or 10 yards of. And until we, made a bad cast on them or something like that, they had no idea we were there. So it's, as long as you're quiet, you can get close. It'll help you out, make a little more accurate cast, and it'll definitely improve things for you.
And that's something I always kind of like to point out. just about fishing in general for me from a boat is displacement. You don't really think about displacement, like how much water you're displacing. Now we've talked about displacement on the ship before in regard to catching cobia, catching blackfish, stuff like that around some of the around the ship channel. And that's on a much bigger scale. When you're fishing the ship channel and a ship comes by you, the tide will completely change directions while the ship is going by you. And then as the ship gets by, it's coming back to normal, and it happens on a much smaller scale when you're in, you guys are sounds like you're fishing 1 to 2 foot of water, which is a place I can go in my bay boat, but the fish are going to know I'm there well before anywhere within casting range of them. And I think that's what's really cool about a kayak is you guys are like whisper freaking quiet. You displace no water whatsoever. The fish have no idea. And I've seen this happen over in Louisiana, particularly a lot. I've got a little 16-foot flats boat, and I've also got a 25-foot bay boat. When you pull into a pond over in Louisiana in a 25-foot bay boat, if you're not like drifting as slow as you possibly can, zero trolling motor or anything like that, the fish act so much differently around the big boat than they do when you're in the little skiff, the little 16-foot skiff. It's like they don't even know you're there. And like what you're talking about with the kayak, I think there's a lot of that's displacement. So I think that's a lot for everybody to take note of on both sides. You're a kayak guy, but even for your bay boat guys, when you're going into super shallow water like that, you got to slow that drift down as much as you can, to try not to displace water, because the fish can feel every bit of that.
I was just about to say they can feel you stomping around the deck. They can feel your little John pumping. Yeah. I mean, they can hear everything. You know what I'm saying? They know what's going on.
Yeah. And I tell you, if you can get on there, if you can get on those flats and they don't know you're there, it is so much easier to get them to bite. And it's so cool to watch them too, because you see a redfish act how a redfish is supposed to act. And it's exciting. It's exciting watching them that close.
Well, that's an awesome report, and we appreciate the tip and everything, man. Good stuff.
Yeah, that's a great report, man. It's really good talking to you as always.
People want to book a trip with you. What's the best way to get in touch with you, Scott?
Yep. So you can either call me or text me at 251-408-2604, or you can check me out on Fishing Chaos. And, Fishing Chaos keeps an up-to-date calendar of all my free days, all my trip rates and everything. That's probably the easiest way to book a trip.
FishingChaos.com?
Yep. FishingChaos.com.
Awesome, man. We appreciate you, bud. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. It's good talking to you guys. I'll see you later.
All right, Captain Richard. It's always good to hear from Scott Kennedy. I like that dude, man.
Man, he does a great job on the show.
Can do it from the kayak too. All right, man. Let's go down to the onshore report. Let's see what Captain Dusty Hayes with Shore Thing Fishing's up to. What'd you say, Captain Dusty?
Oh, what's going on, guys?
Not much, man. Tell us a fish story from the surf. What's been going on?
It's been pretty decent. It's starting to pick up. We're getting a lot of the conditions that we like in the springtime. The southerly winds with southeast or southwest today, actually, starting to see a lot more of the redfish showing up, good numbers of redfish everywhere. Have been a few pompano here and there, still some black drum, both to the east and to the west. A lot of guys down Fort Morgan getting a lot of redfish and drum and some whiting too. The Orange Beach area has been kind of bare on the whiting. We've been getting a couple, but not a lot. And then, to the west, they've been picking up, or to the east, the whiting have been picked up. But I've heard some decent numbers of pompano, like I said, to the east, as far as the bigger ones, like Pensacola Beach area, stuff like that, a few different ports over there, some guys catching them, and then lots of redfish just pretty much everywhere, it seems like, from Fort Morgan to, the Orange Beach, Gulf Shores area, and into Perdido Key. And we've been catching them on a variety of things. Some days ghost shrimp is definitely the ticket, and then other days just a regular peeled shrimp works good. And there's been a few days where sand fleas have really done well too. The best thing I could say for you is make sure you have a variety of baits, variety of rigs, and move around a little bit. Today I was out there at sunup, and we didn't get a bite till 11, and I was moving 30, 40 yards at a time, and we ended up catching a big drum, a couple whiting, and a nice permit this morning, and just hopping from little hole that looks good, different little sandbar structures and all that, and just working our way down the beach, and eventually we found some fish. So but it has been good. You got to be patient. It's still early. The water temp's warming, and the conditions are favorable for the pompano to be coming through, and they will any minute heavily. But you really just got to be out there and be ready for them.
For sure. We've been battling with it a ton over here. What's the water clarity like over there from Fort Morgan, say the pass over there?
Fort Morgan area is still pretty dirty from what I've seen. I know a little closer, they're still, like the middle between Gulf Shores and Fort Morgan. They've been catching fish that way because the water's been decent. To the east, from the east side of Rodeo Pass, like to this morning, it was nice. I mean, it wasn't crystal clear, but it had that bright green tint to it, which is, I prefer. If it's super, super clear, the fish get really picky and finicky and very shy, where it's just got that green tint to it. That's really all you can ask for. And it was real pretty today. I fished Johnson's Beach yesterday afternoon. It was real muddy, but, we did catch some nice redfish over there. So it's kind of just moving back and forth. There was a few patches of dirty water when that southwest wind picked up that I guess were coming from out of the pass and that were moving towards us, but they didn't ever come across the sandbar.
So it sounds like this time of year, Dusty, you kind of need to be prepared for everything. The pompano are showing up. You're catching some red drum. You're catching some black drum. You're catching some whiting. What's your setup look like right now? Are you fishing 3? Are you fishing 5? Are you fishing 1 close, 1 far? Just kind of walk me through it a little bit because it sounds like you need to be ready for everything, huh?
Yeah, I'll do it's kind of the same thing almost all year. Obviously, if you're on one particular thing that seems to be working, then that's what you want to duplicate the most. A day like today where got almost nothing, you're starting from scratch every day this time of year because you don't know, like these fish might like a certain color float or they might be right up close. There's a whole bunch of factors that go into it. What I'll do is I'll have a couple of my steelhead rods, my lighter action rods up close with 1 ounce pyramid sinkers if the conditions allow it. And I'm throwing, from 5 to 15 yards right off the shoreline. And some days, like yesterday, the only fish were caught on that. Today, we were catching fish a little further. But I'll just stagger lines out from, like I said, just a few feet all the way up to as far as I can cast and cover that base. Some days you'll catch them all over. Some days it's only close. Some days it's only far. It seems like a lot of times in years past with the pompano, most of them are going to be a little further casting on the early side of the spring. And then as it gets later, you'll catch them up close. But, your drum and redfish and stuff, they might only be a couple feet away from you. So, and you don't know, every day is going to be different. It's just like any other kind of fishing, they're going to do what they're going to do. You just got to be prepared to fish multiple ways. I don't have, 10 big rods out. I usually fish 4 rods. I'll have 2 closer rods and I'll have 2 further rods. And what I'll do is I'll stagger them just because there's different features along the beach that will change, where those fish, especially the whiting and stuff that are really close, they might be on a little washout or something like that where that current's meeting. And if you're fishing it, if you got a long rod on top of that, you may not be really fishing it right. So I'll try to do long, short, or even like a short, long, medium, back to short, just kind of staggered around. That way, whatever fish are real close to the shore, where that short rod is, they might only be right there. They might not be close to the shore 10 yards down the beach. So a lot of times there's little things that you may not be able to see, but those fish are kind of congregating in a little smaller area just because of whatever current or whatever, when the waves are coming up, the way they're falling through and making a little washout. That's why sometimes they're there where they are. So, moving around and just not keeping baits in the same exact spot every time is a big thing, just to finding bites that you may have not got if you just throw in the same spot cast after cast.
Hey, Dusty, let me ask you a question, man. Are you fishing off the beach or are you bill fishing for fish, man? Because you said you're talking about fishing long, short, fishing behind this wave, that wave, man. You sound like you're setting a spread for a blue marlin, man.
Yeah, I like it.
I like it, dude. I like it a lot, man. You really sound like you're getting it down to a science.
Got to.
This. Yeah. Hey, look, I want to. I'm just messing with you there a little bit about that, but I want to back up, man. You're talking about catching a permit earlier. Man, it's hard to believe that we're doing the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report, and more than multiple occasions I've heard about catching permit.
Yeah.
Is that how's that? What's your view on that? I mean, I know I have caught one for sure in Alabama, and it was a long time ago. I remember what boat I was in. So that was probably pre-2005 12 or 13, I caught one, and I remember
seems to be a lot more of them showing up.
Oh yeah, but what's your experience with that?
It seems like it's becoming more regular. I know probably 5 or more years ago, especially like around November, I'd be whiting and pompano fishing, and I'd catch a little hand-sized one. It's like, oh man, it's a little permit. I remember the first time I caught one, I was like, oh, that's cool. I took a picture of it. And then, that year, I want to say it was like 2015 or so, ended up catching like 10 or 15 small ones. And occasionally you catch one like maybe 2 hand size, like 7 or 8 inches. And then, I want to say probably 16 or 17 in the fall, beach bum and myself, and we didn't know this until like last year. We were just kind of talking, and we both caught a pretty good size one in the same spot the same week, a couple, probably 2 or 3 years ago. And then, believe it or not, so there's a guy that caught one last October, not in 2019, 2018, I'm sorry. So year before last. And he took it to Outcast in Pensacola, and my buddy Zach called me. He goes, hey, you know what this is? This is a pompano or permit. And I said, well, send me a picture. I said, that's definitely a permit. And he said, okay, because he thought he had the world, state record pompano or a world record pompano.
I remember that
permit. And so it turns out, when they sent me the picture of the guy holding it on the beach, he's standing on the East Jetty in Orange Beach. I'm like, well, yeah, he's got the state record for Alabama permit, not a pompano, but that would have been the state record, because this one at the time was, I want to say 6 pounds or something, or still is 6 pounds or something like that. And this dude had one that was almost 10 pounds.
Dang.
So it's becoming more regular. And I think a lot of it is there's a lot more people fishing the beach now than there ever has been.
Sure.
A lot of people like watching the videos and stuff, and a lot of people getting into it, and it's great. Like I said, a lot more rods and reels in the water, period, than there ever has been. So we're seeing a lot more different fish. They're
social media too.
Tarpon.
Social media too, right?
Right.
Everything's right. You see everything. Everybody posts everything. So I think that's a big deal with the fishing industry in general. It's just right in front of your face all the time.
Media.
That's right.
Yeah, that was kind of my next question is how many more eyeballs are on everything nowadays versus back
10
in the
years
day.
ago.
Yeah, and that's like when I caught this one I caught was like 10 years. Like I said, I think it was like either probably 2012 or 13. I just remember which boat I was in, is the only reason I could think back to the one I caught, and I took a picture of it and I showed it to Dr. Bob and Dr. Bob's ship, and Dr. Bob was like, yo, yeah, that's definitely a permit. And he's like, man, he's like, I remember him telling me that year there was an influx of them, he had seen a bunch of them, a bunch of people were talking about it. He was even in a fish market over in Orange Beach, and was where they had like the whole fish laying there in the glass there, and he saw several permit there that were being sold as pompano, which I guess when they're that small, it's probably hard to tell the difference in eating.
The one we had today was actually the first one I've ever killed. I've always just let them go, but these guys were like, well, they're from Wisconsin, and they were looking for a couple fish for dinner. I said, it was 14 inches, right? Well, 15 total length, and it was 12 and a quarter fork length. So technically it was legal if you're going by pompano regulation. So I was like, yeah, I don't mind, just keeping one. And it was the first one I ever cleaned. They're very similar body structure. The spine's a lot higher on them than the pompano is. And then obviously once you get below that spine, the rib cage goes a lot further back towards their their bottom dorsal. Mm-hmm. And it's very similar, but different at the same time. But it was pretty cool. I mean, the meat's almost like pompano. It's not as white, not as firm. It's a little more, I don't know what to compare it to. It almost kind of looked like trout to me. As far as the looks of it, a little more grittier looking than it was. It had that real flaky look to it. But yeah, it was the first one I ever killed. But it's funny, you get a guy like what I had this morning with my customers, and they catch one and they're like, oh yeah, what is that? It's like, it's a permit, in Alabama. And they're like, cool. Like
right. They don't know what they
don't understand it. So
yeah.
Matthew, he's got a few bonefish off the beach too. I think I've been there for like 2 of the 3 or 4 he's caught. And I mean, we were actually with, I don't remember who all was there. I know Max and somebody else was. We were trying to catch pompano for the hatchery in Gulf Shores, and we caught everything but pompano that day, and redfish and flounder and whiting, and caught a bonefish. And I saw it, and he reeled it in, and I was like, is that a bonefish? He's like, Yeah. And I said, holy crap, we just caught a bonefish in Alabama. So, and those are two fish that kind of have the same lifestyle, flat style and Keys and Bahamas, you just don't picture them here, but, they make it up here somehow. I think the Gulf Stream has a lot to do with it.
For sure. Global warming, definitely.
Like I said a little while ago, are we bill fishing or are we fishing, fly fishing in South Florida or the Bahamas?
Right.
Like, what's going on here, man?
Who knows, man?
Yeah. There's guys that catch permit a lot on jigs, sight fishing, especially, I don't know if y'all remember the Connors jigs that you used to see in J&M and all that stuff all the time, and Sam's, the little pompano jigs. His dad, Connor's dad, would always go down to, I want to say Pensacola up here or like Navarre and sight fish pompano. He'd catch permit all the time on jigs. I remember seeing pictures on Facebook years ago.
Wow. That's
crazy. Dusty, this time of year in the surf, is it worth it to try anything artificial while you got out your 4 set rigs? Is it just not worth it?
Yeah, you can. I mean, there's redfish out there and they'll be eating bait fish. As you get into March, when you say this time of year, like it's kind of, you're in that, like kind of like a pinch point, it's like this time of year last week or this time of year next week, because you're in that transition time. As soon as that bait fish starts showing up, which it has in some areas, every few days you'll see just waves of bait coming through and there's birds diving. Man, if that bait decides to get on the beach, there's something with it, especially bigger birds. It could be reds, it could be mackerel, it could be bluefish, it could be a lot of stuff, and you'll see in kind of not necessarily surf wise, but the guys that go cobia fishing this time of year, like late March, I mean, you'd see tarpon coming in, big schools of jacks and all that stuff starting to come through in the spring. I mean, when they start coming up this way. So as soon as that water, gets where the pompano are coming through, it'd be, there's other stuff right behind them. So, and if you're fishing down Fort Morgan, I'm considering going in the next few days and trying to throw some plugs for trout because, I mean, and Richard probably knows, but there's a lot of freshwater pushing all those fish out of somewhere. I don't know where they're going. I don't fish that way that much. But, I know a lot of the trout got to be pushed out somewhere in deeper water or somewhere off out of the bay. So if the conditions get warm enough, the baits, and the bait's there, I mean, they'll get in that surf earlier, so I don't see why there wouldn't be a few trout down there already.
Yep, I agree with that. They got to be somewhere. But my buddy Jay and I were talking, KillerDock, Jay Williamson, were talking last week. I guess it was last week, and all that terrible water was coming down. It's like, where do you go fishing right now? Besides where the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report guys tell you to. We were looking at the satellite imagery, and on the tip of the west end, on the Gulf side, there was a little pocket of clean water. I was like, man, I bet there's some gator trout in there. They got to be somewhere. Like I was talking to Richard last week, they got to be somewhere. Maybe they're all stacked up right there. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm always very wishful in March for speckled trout on the beach, and maybe it's come true like just once or twice, maybe for a fish here or there. You know what I mean? It's never like you go down there and whack them. You know what I mean? It's just like a fish here or there. You always get really excited about it, and then it's still 2 or 3 weeks before you like really catch them. Once you get into April. But I always get the same way. But
Captain Dream Crusher over here.
Hey, well, man. Hey, I'm just bringing you. Hey, I'll bring you the good, the bad, the ugly.
Good, the bad. Yeah,
all right.
Oh yeah. No, it's definitely possible for sure.
Well, there's always plenty of other stuff to catch down there
right.
as well. It's not just speckled trout. That's only one species I was talking about. All right.
Despite what we think.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. I didn't say there wasn't anything else down there. Okay.
Right.
No. I don't fish down there that much. So like I said, it's one of those things that just I'm assuming, that's more y'all's neck in the woods than me. I'll get down there maybe a few times a year.
I agree
100% with what you said.
Right.
Oh yeah. No, I agree with what you say though, 100%. It's pretty much the same thing. There's a lot of stuff down there, and I've only got a few trout in March myself. It seems April is definitely the kind of kickoff for that as far as being consistent goes, for sure.
Right. You ready for the Hey Cap question this week, man?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
This week's Hey Cap sponsor is Daycool Heating and Air. As the saying goes, if you don't like the weather in South Alabama, wait 10 minutes because it's going to change. But one of the things that is very predictable is the pricing at Daycool Heating and Air. They offer flat rate pricing, and they do not charge for after-hour calls. Let's face it, your HVAC always seems to act up when you need it the most. Don't get stuck between a rock and a hot place. Daycool offers flat $45 service calls, $59 tune-ups, and they offer free estimates on equipment replacement. The pros at Daycool have been serving Mobile and Baldwin counties for over a decade. Contact them at 251-633-5121 or check them out online at www.daycoolair.com or on the Daycool Heating and Air mobile app. Their license number AL07028. All right, Dusty. I remember this gentleman. You and I both talked to him at the Mobile Boat Show. Thanks, Michael, for coming up and having a conversation with us. We enjoyed it. Michael Lilligren asks, I got lucky last year and dropped anchor just outside of the breakers on the beach, just east of Fort Morgan. And luckily, I caught a limit of pompanos on set rigs that I'd put in the rod holders. I must have been at the right place, right time, because I can't replicate that after that. Is there a good day to surf fish for pompano from an anchored boat? Do you think dropping a stern and a 4 anchor to minimize swing so set baits aren't dragging? I have never fished from pompano from a boat, so I thought this would be a good question for you, Dusty, because I know you do a lot of both.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what he says, because I've caught a few pompano from the boat when I've been fishing the beach, and actually more than one here or there. But I feel Michael's pain, you know what I mean? Because I'm the same way. Like, man,
be so much better from my boat.
How do you do it from the boat? It seems like the beach guys freaking wreck them. You hardly ever hear about the boat guys catching them, man. So I'm really interested to see what Dusty's got to say, man. What you say, dog?
Yeah, I talked with him about this, and there's a few things I look at. So one, like if you're boat fishing, I think like early part of the year, like right now, a lot of the guys on boats have the advantage because it seems like pompano like structure early, like early March and February, like the jetties, the bridges, the reefs, the inshore reefs, all that stuff that has hard structure in clear water on the incoming tide will have pompano. Whether you may only catch one, you may catch 10, but like even all throughout the winter, you'll have guys that catch some good numbers of pompano. Even some on the rigs and stuff like that. To some people, it's just like, oh yeah, we caught a pompano. When in reality, if you're really trying, you might be able to catch a few more. You'll have guys, and I told him this too. It's kind of like bycatch. Like you'll have guys catch them on topwater plugs all the time. You'll have guys catch them on, jerk baits, live shrimp, and live, LYs and finger mullet and just random stuff. They are jacked. They are an aggressive fish. The previous world record, not the current world record, but the previous one was caught, I want to say in the Port St. Joe, Apalachicola area on a topwater plug. So they are an aggressive fish. As far as anchoring off the beach goes, my, outlook on it is, I know guys that still do and used to a lot more, especially when they were cobia fishing. They would keep jig rod, with a cobia jig, with a pompano jig ready to go. And they'd see, flashes of fish, big schools of fish moving, and they'd cast into them and catch pompano left and right. And I was just like, we didn't see a cobia, but we caught 20 pompano, and it's different all the time. Some people don't pay attention to that stuff. Some guys, like I said, I know a few that have always done that. Now, the other side of that is when you're anchoring up and sitting, putting out set rigs, if those fish aren't moving in big schools, like they're migrating, coming up here to spawn, like everything else, the tarpon and cobia and all that stuff, if they're in that surf and they're feeding, they're keyed in on the stuff that's right on the shoreline. Your periwinkle clams, your ghost shrimp, your sand fleas, and other things that eat marine worms, stuff like that, is all inside that sandbar. There's stuff on the outside, but a lot of it, the reason why they're going to be in that trough is because those waves are beating down the shore, and the sandbar are really pushing all that bait up, and that's what's feeding them. They're not digging down 6 foot underneath the sand to pull out a ghost shrimp. They're using those waves and that current to feed them. Right. So with all that turbulent water, that's their food source. Now, there are fish that travel on the outside of that. And I ask myself all the time, like those days where it's tough inshore fishing, you just like can't put anything together, or trout aren't cooperating. It's like, what do I do now? And it's flat in the Gulf. And it's midday. It's like, why couldn't I just go sit behind the sandbar and tie some pompano rigs up with shrimp and catch pompano and whiting like I do off the beach? Tried it a few times. I haven't done really good with it. It turns into a ladyfish fest usually. But it can be. I think it can be done for sure. I think it's just, you got to have the right conditions. If you were to do it, I would say definitely the next 2 or 3 months, especially April, definitely on an incoming tide. Any day where, you get the right conditions, especially if it's going to be flat, just really flat, calm, and crystal clear water. Sometimes those fish don't want to be right up against the beach on that shallow water if they're just traveling. If they're not feeding and they're just migrating, They might be on the other side of that sandbar where you want to be in your boat and fish that deeper water or be in that deeper water because they don't want birds and dolphins and all that stuff to, dive on them and get them, or dolphins to push them up on the shore.
Yeah, true.
They might like that 12, 13, 15 foot of water. So it's something that you kind of just experiment with. I'm sure if more people did it, it would probably be a little more productive, if you really spend a lot of time doing it. And it sounds like he has. But, there's all kinds of little reasonings for it. Sometimes you just got it, something like that. It's just a matter of just going out there and doing it. But if you go, like I said, April, incoming tide, especially like the full moon week when it's like prime time pompano conditions, I don't see how you could go out there if you had pretty decent, clean water and you put some pompano rigs out, on the backside of the sandbar and put shrimp or sand fleas or whatever and sat out there and anchored your boat up. I don't see how you couldn't catch them. Yeah. Really, you'd have to at least catch a couple.
Let me ask you a question, Dusty. So a boat guy like myself, if I'm going to go fish a series of sandbars and stuff that I think looks good,
you gonna start doing pompano charters?
I'm just asking questions. All right, to an expert over here. All right. So say I am going to do that, and I do find like what an area is where I think is fishy, or maybe I've seen what you're talking about, like seeing some flashes, actually seeing some fish. How long are you going to sit there and give it in an area before you decide, hey, I need to make a move or adjust something or something like that? I mean, is there a certain set amount of time, or is it one of these things where you sit and wait, or are you trying to move?
With me, depending on what fish we're talking about, since we're talking about pompano, they're moving a lot. Say that they would just took a sandbar and drew a circle and the fish are inside of that circle. They're not just sitting point A and maybe easing to point B 10 minutes later. I mean, they're just ding, 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 going back and forth, just swimming around. And like I said, if they're migrating, they're moving steady west at a steady pace. So, if you found a spot that you like and were just consistently waiting, for them to come by, then, like say you see fish and you set up in the spot where you saw them, those fish you saw are long gone. You'd be waiting for more fish to come by. Good reasoning for that is like when we're fishing the beach in the spring, like some of the best pompano days we'll ever have, you might not get a bite for an hour and a half. And all of a sudden you got 10 bites in the next 20 minutes. And then you might not get another bite for another hour. And then it comes back through. It's just waves of fish coming through. So if you're doing it in the spring, like during the migration, you could pick a spot that you were comfortable with, you feel confident in, and, try to let those fish come through and try to catch them doing that. Now, if that's not working, you can try changing your rigging. Some guys do live shrimp, do peeled shrimp. There's different stuff. I would just try a variety. Maybe ghost shrimp if you can, maybe live sand fleas if you can. Just try whatever you pretty much, at least have 2 or 3 things you can give a shot at, and throw a jig too. I mean, if you're sitting out there in deeper water, toss that jig around while you got those set rods out.
Yeah.
But I don't think that moving is too critical. I think if you're on the backside of the sandbar, I don't think moving will be as critical as, say, on the beach, because there might be certain little things on the beach that they're relating to more than others. So you might want to be in a certain area. But as far as on the backside, the Gulf's pretty much just a big sand flat other than the artificial reefs we have. So they're just moving through.
Well, that really gives, I think, me, you answered my question very well there. I think that our listeners are definitely going to pick something up from that as well. It's
a great question.
To me, yeah. I think to me, it seems like a sitting and waiting to get lucky kind of deal. You know what I mean? Because especially this time of year, they're on. It sounds like they're on the move,
moving through. That's right.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Well, that's a great answer to that question, man.
Yep.
We really appreciate you having you on the show. And
thanks, Michael, for that question, man. Michael's going to get a prize back from the Slick Lure. Michael emailed us at alabama@bestfishingreport.com. Y'all send us your Hey Cap questions and getting the runner for that Slick Lure prize. I remember Michael saying that I believe he had a 21-foot catamaran boat, and he says something about, I just got to say it just because I'm weird. He said something about anchoring from the stern. Anchoring from the stern just petrifies me. I just feel like that's just asking to get rolled over, but that's just me being a weirdo.
Yeah, I did remember seeing that in the question, and you mentioned it. I didn't really hit anything on it.
Yeah.
I'll try to be quick. Something I look at is that a lot of times those baits moving is not a bad thing. So if you have a southern swell,
yeah, that's a good point.
Just a little bit, and you're moving just a little bit, there's no big deal. I mean, a lot of times on high current days, if I use a lighter sinker, because if it's too heavy, it'll bury up. I use just a light enough where it's not moving from point. If I cast far left and it's washed up on the beach in a minute, that's too light. But if I cast far left and it's from where I cast it to, 30 yards to the right in 10 minutes, that's fine, because that means it's not buried up and it's covering water. It looks natural. It's moving naturally. So I could go on for another 10 minutes about that. But yeah, if it's moving, I don't think it hurts anything.
Yeah, it's probably about the equivalent of pulling some billfish baits, right? But you got to go reel them up or let them back a little bit every once in a while, right? But keep
movement is good. That's right. All right, Dusty, man, we appreciate you being on. If people want to book a trip with you, I know you're going to be doing a lot of onshore stuff coming up. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way is call or text me at 678-897-0167, or you can get on my Facebook page, Shore Thing Fishing, SHORE, and you can message me on there, and we'll get up. And so the spring pompano run's about to kick off pretty much any day now. March can be iffy, but April for sure is on fire. So just holler at me, and we'll get up and go catch some fish.
Heck yeah. Sounds good, buddy. Thanks for being on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Great talking to you,
Yeah,
bud.
guys, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Last report of the afternoon here. Butch going to go to my tournament partner, the legend.
Last but not least, right?
Yep. The myth, the legend, the man, Captain Bobby Abruscato. How we doing today, sir?
I'm good now, man, off the water, but it was fun because I had a good trip, man. It's, the life we live is great all the time, but it's really great when you have a pretty good trip, so
it's a fact.
And things are coming around. I think it was, to use a worn out cliche, we've kind of turned the corner maybe. Did I say that too loud?
No, we talked about it a little bit earlier too.
I don't want to put the whammy on it.
Yeah. No, I would have called that putting the whammy on us a little bit, but
now it's gonna freaking snow.
Yeah, well, I was kind of talking about when we opened the show up that, I was listening to Dr. Bill on 106.5 there talk about how this morning talk about how we're going to kind of have a nice little dry stretch here for about the next week and a half, So hopefully
that's a change in itself.
Yeah, just not to have it
itself and
not be wet, so wet, nice.
That's the big thing is the dry spell. And then, of course, on top of that, too, with it, too, it's warming up. I saw, like, the extended forecast through the weekend get close to almost to 80 degrees, Now, we're going to be complaining about this in a few months, but right now it feels pretty good. This is my first trip of the year that I left. Now, I had wind pants on most of the day, but I did start out in shorts. So this is my first trip of the year in shorts this year.
I definitely want to go on the record and say I'm not ready for summer yet. I'm not.
Yeah, I remember about 6 months or so ago, we were talking about wanting it to be cool, but It did feel nice to have a little bit of warmer weather, and with that's going to bring those water temperatures up too. And then, like Richard was just talking about, man, we get a little bit of dry weather too. And the big thing right now is still water clarity. You still got to find decent water clarity if you're a trout fisherman. You can get away with redfish, maybe even get away a little bit with live bait. This time of year it's almost non-existent if you got trying to live bait fish for trout. So you gotta still have to find somewhat clearer water right now, and it's still at a premium, although it is getting better, which we were talking about off the air. Water down towards the island is starting to try and clear up a little bit, and the big gauge is that Berry steam plant gauge, and it's crested at 12 and forecast to keep going down. I know I'm probably putting the whammy on us again, but the forecast at least is showing it going down, and as it starts to go down, it's going to go down quickly, and that'll really let that water clear up, continue to clear up, and that's going to be the big key. Some of the fish we've caught, and the fish we caught today truly springtime, a lot closer to what I'd consider closer to a springtime pattern, to where we actually saw a few fish slicks, and we saw some fish that were gathered up a little bit better. It's been, cast to the north, catch a fish, cast to the south, catch a fish, and that sort. Now you kind of like, I got where I wasn't even putting the power poles down. I just keep going. We got a bite because they were so spread out, but now it seems like they're trying to gather up a little bit, which indicates warming water and maybe some spawning, approaching some spawning activity.
So I know you guys fished the bog this past weekend. I won't sing the blues, but what were some of the burdens to bear for you guys? What was the hardest thing? I mean, I know you guys were trying to catch some trout, but you guys did really well with the redfish. What did you guys see? What were your hardest barriers to entry, so to speak?
Well, but probably before we get into what we did, let's congratulate the guys who did well over the weekend. Jonas Alexander and Clay Dean, they brought in a fantastic sack. I want to say they had 12 pounds and some change.
And that's on 3 fish too.
That's on
3 fish. By the way.
Yeah,
they have a krill there.
Yep, and that was their first W. Like that was their first place win in that thing. Those guys were tickled to death. I was tickled to death for them.
They should be.
Yeah, I kind of misspoke there. I said Jonas Alexander. I meant to say AKA Muscle Mania. Okay, that's my man Muscle. My man Muscle got his first win, and then John Howard and David Hare won overall points team of the year this year. Those guys have been right on Bobby and I's tail every year in this thing, and they had a good finish Saturday to win the big trophy win overall. So before we get into what we didn't do over the weekend tournament, I really wanted to congratulate those guys, man. They did a great job over the weekend. It's been a very interesting year with this whole, we've had a format change and had some limit changes from the state and whatnot. It's been very interesting to see where it's taken us. And sounds like Bobcat and I need to tighten up a little bit. Hopefully, next year we're going to come back with a vengeance. I thought I was going to do it this last tournament. It was tough on us.
Man, it's all good.
Well, I'm seconding that. Yeah, I'm seconding that. Congratulations to those guys. And the cool thing about this thing is guys that he just mentioned there, Richard just mentioned, are grinders. They've been in this thing from the start almost, and they show up no matter what. And if they don't, whether they do well or not in the previous tournament, they're going to show back up. And it's easy to get discouraged in these things, but these guys hung in there and really did well. And we did. Can we change the subject now?
I know. You guys fish a lot of tournaments. I know that. Whenever I was fishing a lot of tournaments back in the day, my dad said something every time we didn't win. I fished a bunch of blue marlin tournaments and all that. I think I gaffed my first blue marlin when I was like 15 years old. I grew up on the back deck. And one thing he would always say is every dog has his day.
Yeah.
Always
right.
resonated with me is every dog has his day. So
that's right. Well, they definitely had theirs, and and shoot more. Like I said, proud of those guys. It was kind of a pleasure to see the guys that have won the last couple tournaments. Guys that have just grinded and been there every time, and they show up, and they catch fish. They catch fish, probably all week long or the weekend before, But today, that day was their day, And then we've had those too, man. We've had those plenty of those days ourselves too. So it was kind of fun to see that. For a little while, but like Richard was saying, we'll strap it on and tee it up again next year.
That's right.
Well, we did have a real good day on redfish. It's too bad we weren't fishing a redfish tournament instead of a speckled trout tournament, because we'd had a really, really nice stringer on redfish. And it seems like, Bobby, kind of talking to the rest of the contributors on the show today, everybody's been having a really good time on redfish.
Theme, yeah.
Yeah, definitely a very common theme. All the way fishing the beach to guys who are kayak fishing in some of the rivers and
Orange Beach, Gulf Shores.
Yeah, and to us, so maybe that's about to be a common theme here for the spring. So maybe we're going to have a good crop of redfish come through.
Yep, and I heard some down towards the west too, some good reports. So that's really cool to hear. I've heard some of that, and that's cool to hear. Obviously, I hadn't heard the other reports, but we caught redfish in the tournament, and we were joking about it. We're like, if we had a phenomenal slot redfish limit, Richard and I did on Saturday, and we had that limit from the last place we would have fished with the last lure we would have used for redfish, So that's how good they were biting. It was almost like we were, it was like strictly a trout application we were fishing and caught those. And then, I heard about, some of the fish down to the west and then hearing what you guys are talking about. That's great to hear. And to me, I think of spring, is we're going into that early trout bite, but there's redfish kind of get us through the late winter and early spring, don't they, Rich? It's like it's like when you get muddy water, you go like, it's just not. It's hard to be enthusiastic about trout fishing, but those redfish, if you can find them and get around them, they don't care, man. They just don't care. What the water looks like, and and even some cases what the salinity levels are.
No, heck no. I know I've had a lot of really, really good trips on. Heck, I know for sure for a fact all of the very best redfish, like slot redfish days I've ever had have always been, I would say March, April, and then it kind of extending into May. Some years have always been about that, about this time of year. And like you said,
we get where. Sometimes it seems like when the trout, you wonder if we don't have a better redfish than we give ourselves credit, fishery than we give ourselves credit for, because when the trout fishing gets tough, we start targeting reds and we're able to catch them like you're talking about. And we just, you kind of got to make yourself wonder sometimes, why don't we target them a little bit more than we do, here?
Yeah,
but,
we kind of maybe
20 or 30 years ago, it wasn't like that, or not even that long ago, 10 or 15 years ago. If you caught redfish, it was a bonus thing to your trip. Now you feel like in certain cases, particularly like you're talking about this time of year, and for the next month or so, it's a fairly reliable fishery, and could be even more so probably if we target.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like it's a little bit, we might take it for granted a little bit, how good it can actually be at times, and that's,
and that's just talking about marsh and slot size fish. This time of year, I mean, unless something crazy happens, this is like almost prime time for, the things that Alabama's really recognized for is our bull red fishery at the mouth of the bay. And this time of year, it's very weather sensitive, but it's a very reliable fishery when you can go out there and, almost at will a lot of times catch, near trophy size redfish on artificial bait, literally at will, with the right conditions. So, that's another fishery, and that's this time of year, and we've had people come in from out of town for tournaments and whatnot, that have gone, or even, people that are experienced anglers that go with us on charters, and you take them out there going like, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable that the fishery that you have here. And this is the time of year that to me, it seems like March, April, May, maybe back even in February a little bit, if you can get out there to where you can really go out there and wreck those fish.
That's right. Yep. I definitely agree with that. Always think about like that bull red thing turning on around the mouth of the bay, right around the wharf boat show. I think the wharf boat show is not this weekend, but it's next weekend. And that should really, that really should stay good all the way through the end of the month of May until it really warms up good.
Right. That seems to be when it really goes downhill, is when it starts to get warm and hot. It just gets toothy out there. But up until then, it's, again, condition-wise, as long as the conditions are right, that thing stays pretty dang good.
Yep. Kind of going back to something you were talking about, when it was, 10 or 15 years ago, and it was hard to come by these redfish bites. And, of course, I've only been guiding 10 years. You've been doing it for 3 times as long as I have for a living.
Well, what I told somebody the other day, you heard the Bible story. They asked me how long I've been doing it. I said, the Bible story where Jesus told the apostles to throw the net on the other side of the boat. Well, I was the next boat over when that happened.
That's funny. But what I was going to say about that is something I've experienced is I have experienced days in Alabama where you can go and catch, 40, 50, 60 redfish, slot reds in a day. And that's a reason I really like doing catch and release on reds. I know that's something I picked that up from you several years ago. I can't even remember the last time I ever put one in the cooler. And I really think it's made a difference, because as well as I do, these slot reds can really be homebody. They find an area that they like, that they have plenty of forage on, and they don't leave. They'll really stay in these areas for a long time. And if you keep releasing them, there's plenty for you to catch and have fun on for years to come if you don't clean them all out. So
that's right. And they, on top of that is they're a good catch and release species. They handle, catch and release real well. The other thing is they, like trout do, are really prolific spawners. They start at a very young age and lay a lot of eggs. Redfish aren't like that. They have to be about 4 or 5 years old before they even start making babies, whereas a trout is about 6 months old, is sexually mature. So they're already making babies at 6 months. But a redfish, which is a 25, 4 or 5 year old redfish, depending on the area, is 25, 26, 27 inches. That's the reason they put that limit right there they don't start making babies until they're that age. So you start taking some of those pre-spawn fish out of a fishery, and conservation management will tell you they like to give them at least one chance to spawn. But you take one of those out, and then certainly some of those big bull reds out of there, which are the big spawners. Now you've killed not just one fish, but a whole bunch of fish. And you start doing the math and what it would end up being 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. Now you're talking about huge numbers. And I think you're exactly right, is the mentality with catch and release on redfish has helped dramatically to turn the redfish fishery into what we had 20 years ago, like I was talking about, to where it's at right now. And that involves catch and release. And the thing that they talk about, redfish, they're not a great eating fish. People go, it's great to do the redfish thing on the half shell and whatever. But as far as like cleaning fillets of redfish, there's a lot better fish to eat out there. So it's just a mystique that was created years ago by a recipe, and that's just not that great. You can put blackened seasoning on a flip flop and throw it in a hot grill, and it's probably not going to be too bad.
That's a fact.
So they're just, and that's what I try and educate my clients. I'm going like, man, there's you want to go catch some fish to eat? Let me take you catch some white. You're going to cook them tonight? I'm going to take you to catch some white trout, or you can keep these small specks or sheephead for that matter. I'll even clean them for you, but I'm just not going to kill redfish just for that reason. It's number one, they're not that great. They would, 30 or 40 years ago, nobody's even keeping them. They were just a giant croaker,
Right.
So it was just a mystique that was brought about, and but it's a wonderful game fish. It's a wonderful game fish. They fight like crazy, even the small ones, and like Richard said, they're fairly easy to catch, and they stay put once you find them. So, good catch and release fishery.
For sure. And we talk about it all the time on here. We think, this time last year, or maybe in fall of 18, we were talking about bumper crop and how everybody's seeing, tons of redfish, tons of smaller redfish. And that's great. I mean, that's what we want to see.
Because that's right. Those smaller ones turn into those bigger ones, and that's when
a
they
fact.
start making.
100%.
That's right.
So I don't want to give away you guys secret spots, but y'all had a great day on redfish on Saturday. We just talked to Scott Kennedy over in Orange Beach Gulf Shores, and he was saying that he's targeting redfish on top water. He's been crushing them in probably 2 foot of water on his kayak on grass flats. Does that parallel what you guys were seeing, or?
Well, we were around grass for sure. We weren't throwing top water just because we were trout fishing in a tournament, and that's not a real high percentage way to catch them. But everything else matched up exactly what he was talking about. He was throwing a mullet imitation like we're talking about, and we were throwing the slick lure, which we just live by, and they were eating that thing. So they were eating a mullet imitation like he's throwing with top water. Now, doesn't mean I like to catch redfish on top water, so that always excites me, because there's nothing. I tell you, a big trout bite on the top water is way cool. It's an incredible strike. To watch a clumsy old redfish trying to eat a top water, that's a lot of fun too, because they stay after it, man. They're not designed to eat something on top, but it doesn't stop them from trying, man. They're all over the top of it. And most of the time you catch a redfish on his top water, unless it's a really big one, he's going to be all hooked in the back of his head and his gill and his chin and everything else. But he still keeps trying to eat it, so it's fun, and they stay after him all the way to the boat, or the kayak in his case. But that's what's fun too. They'll just stay after it the whole time. So they're a fun species to catch on a top water.
So let's talk about trout a little bit. Water clarity's been tough around here. Did you guys find any spots that were, significantly better than others, or was it just tough all around? I was telling Richard earlier, I talked to a guy at the boat show, and he literally has this mechanism with a GoPro on it with an angle iron. He was dropping down 30 or 40 feet in the Mobile River, and it was black on the bottom. I mean, there's no clarity anywhere.
Yeah. Well, we spend most of our time in fairly shallow water, and there's, with a shallow water column like that, we don't have to have air clear water, really super clear water. We just need what we, kind of visually can look at. And, it was weird. I thought, what we fished is it would go sometimes an hour or two. I don't know if it's because of the water direction or the wind direction we were getting. The water was on the low side anyway, to where it would kind of clean up to where it looked halfway decent, fishable. And then it would go, kind of as even in shallow water or muddy as I'd like to fish. It was kind of weird how the water clarity was working. But, from Saturday to today, the difference in the water clarity is amazing. You know, it's not great, but it's light years better, and it stayed consistent all day. And that's just a function of those rivers dropping out.
Right. And what we're talking about for our listeners here is, you know, we're still fishing tidal rivers. You know, we're not out in Mobile Bay anywhere, out in any kind of open water or anything. I still think, and Bobby, you'll probably agree with me, you know, most of the open water stuff is still just absolutely.
Oh, it's trash.
It's unfishable kind of stuff. So we're fishing in some of these tidal rivers, and some of them are better than others right now.
For sure.
And it's been an incredibly tough
interesting
year.
Interesting spring, so to speak, or pre-spring, I guess.
Yeah, I would just say through the whole winter, it's been an incredibly tough fishery in these tidal rivers. You know, we see these little flurries of action where we have these great days here or there, and then you come back the next day or the next week or something like that, and it's just
trash.
It's not, just not anything what you saw. The conditions have been very, very tough. Have not lended well at all.
Yeah, I'm looking at Windfinder. Friday, pretty much south. All day Saturday, south. A little bit of east in it. What are you guys gonna do this weekend if you have a trip? And what's your plan?
We do. They're putting us back to work now. Our vacation's over. I'm going to start out at least doing what I did today. You know, I'm going to stay in the rivers for the next at least day or so, you know, and then it just depends on what I do probably in the next day or two. And the other thing you run into a little bit when you start fishing the tidal rivers coming into the spring when you get nice weather like this is the boat traffic can really be a problem when the weather starts getting nice in some of those rivers. You know, people hadn't had their boat in the water in a while, and they want to get out and run it around a little bit, and rightfully so, you know, because it gets pretty. So you kind of start to get run out of those on the weekend. So I'm going to kind of see me personally, I'm just going to kind of see what happens with the boat traffic in my next trip or two, and then I'll decide what I'm going to do on the weekends, you know. But I know just from past history, if the weather will cooperate a little bit, you know, I want to get down, at least down in the marsh systems down there, and maybe try and catch some redfish down there, you know. So that's probably what I do. I might jump ship this weekend and head down that way, just depending on what I do in the next day or two.
What you think with southeast wind? I mean, is that going to clean it up at all?
I don't think there's any clean water in our near future. We're kind of talking about Berry Steam Plant. It's at like 12.5 feet and rising right now. So it's not going to get a whole lot better. We got a nip tide here the next couple of days. So some new water getting pushed in and out of the it's not really gonna help. Not going to lend a whole lot. I'm gonna stick close to some of these tidal systems, you know, around the mouth and whatnot, because I think we're starting to see springtime trending fishing coming along. So I'm gonna start to focus around the mouths of some of these bigger tidal systems right now, and hopefully that's going to work for us. I still think, like I said when we opened the show up, that it's going to be a little bit before we really see like a full-fledged like spring movement. I think it's going to be a little bit. These fish have got to have some type of salinity before they start moving.
Yeah, well, I guess the next few weeks will dictate that. You know, we got to get that inshore tip from you, Captain Bobby, before we let you go. This week's inshore tip is brought to us by Advanced Transmission. Is your truck's transmission acting a little funny? If someone tells you your transmission needs to be replaced, get a second opinion. At Advanced Transmission in Spanish Fort, Alabama, 99% of transmissions can be repaired and do not need to be replaced. They're the only transmission facility on the Gulf Coast that rebuilds CVTs, and they have courtesy vehicles available at no charge with a major transmission overhaul. Give them a call at 251-626-6061 or check them out online at www.advanced-transmission.com. Be sure to tell them that you heard this ad on Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report for a 10% discount. What you say, Captain Bobby? What you think for a tip this week, bud?
Well, I'm going to go with what I saw today. One of the things felt like it started happening a little bit today, and it's only going to continue to improve that way, is we talk about fishing trout slicks, which are shiny spots on the water. They're just dead giveaways of trout, and they do it all the time when they're feeding. But when the water starts to warm up and they start to bite a little bit better and they go into their spawning patterns and gather in bigger groups, you start to see those fish slicks pop up. A lot more. And it's a great way to locate fish, because when they're doing this spawning, as they go into this spawn, they gather up in those groups. And sometimes they'll be in places that you wouldn't even think they'd be. You might be running by them and you'll smell them or see these slicks. So the tip I want to give you is learn how to recognize them. Don't look for those big long slicks. These things will be anywhere from the size of a dinner plate, 10 to 30 feet across. Get upwind of the slick. The slick's not where the fish are. The slick was created by the fish. So you want to figure out which way the slick is being blown or is being drifted by the current, and get upwind from that and start making your cast towards those slicks, those fish slicks. Have something to be able to stop the boat if you do hit a school. These are going to be schooling fish. Things like we have power poles on our boats, stake or something you can spear into the ground, or just the old way we used to do it, where we had an anchor sitting on the gunnel of the boat and ready to be kicked over, but figure out some way to stop the boat, because as opposed to what we've been doing all winter, which is a fish here, fish there, when these fish start to gather up, if you can locate them, you can really turn it into a whack fest. I mean, you can really catch a lot of fish, and there's always bigger females mixed in with those schools, and those slicks are dead giveaways. So learn how to recognize them, learn how to fish them. And the big thing, again, with fishing them is make sure you start from don't idle through the slick, by the way. If you see one and you want to get upwind from it, don't idle straight through it. Make a big loop around it so you set your drift up into the slick. You idle through one in a place that doesn't have structure, those fish are going to scatter and go somewhere else. So you want to make sure you don't do anything to upset that school. If you see one and you're downwind of it, you want to figure out some way to idle around it and start drifting back into it, making your casts.
Sure. I'm not very good at this, and I'll be the first one to admit that. I have a lot of faux slicks, wind slicks, as I call them. Is there a dead giveaway, man? I mean,
the big thing I would tell you is the shape of the slick. The shape of the slick. If you're downwind from it, you'll smell it. But the shape of the slick is the big thing. You gotta, and it's also a function of how hard the wind's blowing. If the wind's blowing hard, when that, picture what would happen if you dropped a droplet of menhaden oil on the surface of the water. What would happen if it's real calm? The slick's going to sit there and expand as the molecules spread across the water. If it's real choppy, it's going to break that slick up. But basically, the big thing to me is the shape of the slick. If it's nice and round, that's usually some sort of fish slick. Okay. If it's a big long, like you mentioned, like a wind slick, if it's a big long thing, long straight line, that's something
probably
else.
A faux slick.
Boat oil or faux slick. Yeah, I like that. So something along that line. So you kind of have to. I guess probably the big thing, again, just a simple short answer, is look for the shape of the slick. That's the big thing.
More of a pothole than a riff, kind of.
A pothole. That's right. A sewer lid. Yep.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby, is that how you catch those 4, 5, 6, 7 pound trout? Finding those slicks.
That's right.
That's exactly. Yeah, that's right. And you catch them one after the other,
stacked up in there.
You want to expand on that any?
Well, what happens with that is what he's joking about is we get calls sometimes for people that just want to go catch. I want to just go catch big trout. They leave out the rest of that statement, which is, I want to go catch big trout like school trout. So they want to catch 5-pounders one after the other. We do. Right. We do too. Right. We do too.
Everybody
but it ain't
does.
Gonna happen. It's not
right.
No, it's not going to happen. As long as I've been trout fishing, I've had those very special days where that's happened, but it's very few and far between. So this is action fishing. But I can tell you this. I've caught some of the biggest trout some really big trout mixed in with those schools. You got to understand that there's a big queen bee in that school somewhere, and there's probably multiple ones. So you're going to end up, if you're lucky enough, because they're outnumbered by the smaller male trout, the buck trout, and they're wide open like the buzzer bees and stuff, you know what I'm saying? But if you can get that queen bee to bite, there's some bigger fish in those schools, so you'll be sitting there catching those, 14 to 18 inch fish. and somebody might get lucky and catch that. So don't think just because you're doing the reason all those 14 to 18 inch fish are there is because Queen Bee's there. She's there somewhere making babies,
Sure.
So there's a chance you're going to catch that fish.
Yeah, and kind of what I was getting at too is it's just because you see slicks doesn't mean that there's like keeper size fish there. That's kind of what I was getting at when I made that little joke there was just there's no way to tell the size of the fish based on the seeing a slick. All the slick does is tell you. There's
fish of some sort feeding there.
Yeah, and it's not to say that it's absolutely speckled trout there either. I've been around what I call slicking fish and caught catfish one after another, or
white trout.
Oh yeah, or white trout. Yeah. So it just tells you that there's something they're feeding. And heck, now you're listening to guys talk about being hundreds of miles offshore and seeing slicks and catching tuna and dolphin and stuff like that. It's more than just us meager speckled trout fishermen are paying attention to the slick.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, that's right. And what he was talking about, one of my comments is we pull up on it if we do stop on a slick or something and start catching 12 and 13 inch trout, and all it does, Richard, my saying is all it tells you is that there's fish there. It doesn't tell you what size they are.
That's all right.
A 6-pounder makes the same slick as a 12-incher. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
You just don't know.
Oh man, it's all good, Captain Bubba. We appreciate that report, and that's a great tip, man. It's time to start looking for those slicks this time of year, start catching them trout.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on, and I appreciate it.
Well, cool, right, Bobcat. Bobcat, how do we get in touch with you if you want to book a trip?
A-Team Fishing is the website. That's the easiest way to get us is ateamfishing.com, and there's a Contact Us tab on there that's got all of our contact information on it.
Awesome, Captain Bobby. We'll talk to you soon, buddy, and keep whacking them.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Always good to hear from the Marshal of the Mississippi Sound, man.
The Marshal.
Silver mullet.
Man, I call him the Silver Fox, man, because he's being mean. Old Bobcat. He's always good for some entertainment and maybe a little bit of fishing here and there,
Always.
Yeah, I love that guy to death, man. I don't know what I'd do without him as a mentor and a fishing partner.
Just for the fishing industry as a whole here, man. He's just a staple. He's a legend, truthfully.
Yep, he does so much for, like you said, just fishing in general, fishery and fishery for Alabama. He just absolutely loves it. Can't get enough of it. The fire is not going out anytime soon, folks. So don't get excited.
That's right. Yeah. Don't get comfortable. Get comfortable. Coming for you.
Nope.
All right, man. Well, we got to do What'd You Learn? And this week's What'd You Learn is brought to us by Fishbites. Are you tired of stinking baits? Fishbites don't stink or leave a stink on your hands and everything else. They don't require bait buckets or ice to stay fresh while you fish. Fishbites can withstand a number of bait stealers for many, many minutes. They won't come off the hook during a hard cast or in rough waters. Check out the full line of scented saltwater and freshwater baits at tackle at fishbites.com. Well, what'd you learn this week, man?
Oh man,
a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff. I enjoyed Scott's segment a lot.
Yep, I did too. And listening to Scott and to
Dusty had a lot too, man.
Yep, Dusty, and then Captain Bobby. Man, I always kind of think about the month of March as being a like we're kind of talking about on Captain Bobby's segment, and going all the way into almost the start of the summer is redfish. It's redfishing time. In my opinion, when weather permits, that Dixie Bar area, Lighthouse, Sand Island,
that's fun. When those things get bunched up in there and the water turns red, that's fun.
Yep, and that's the time. Yep, that's the time that we're coming up to right now. Is that bull redfish bite, and then that gets so good that we're known for in Alabama, but also the slot redfish, like what Scott's talking about in his report around some of those nice grass flats, and then Bobby and I saw real nice redfish bite, and we weren't even fishing for redfish. We weren't even throwing redfish lures like we were kind of talking about. I'd love to see if we were throwing redfish lures when we were around some of those reds, and we did it all on artificial. Who knows what we've been doing if we'd been using some type of scented lure or some live bait or some dead bait or something like that. You probably could have caught a zillion of them. Just thinking about how many fish we caught on on artificial with no scent whatsoever. Yeah. So I don't know. I got redfish on my brain. That's what I'm going to want to do here in the next couple of weeks before the hopefully this next couple of weeks, the water's going to start to clean up around Mobile Bay, down Mississippi Sound. Cause I mean, it's bad everywhere right now. I think most everybody knows that. So hopefully the next couple of weeks are kind of red fishing, get us through. Sheephead bite still doesn't sound like it's really fired off. It's like every other person you talk to who's been sheephead fishing has done okay on them, done enough to just get their limit or something like that, but it's not gangbusters. And of course, live bait's not real plentiful yet. It's always tough this time of year. Mm-hmm. So in redfish, you generally don't seem to care about that, as long as you're using something scented like a gulp or a voodoo shrimp with some Procure on it, or a fish bite, something of that nature. One of these great scented baits we have. So that's just kind of what I think about.
Yep.
What about you, Butch? What'd you learn today, bud?
I like the redfish thing too, man. I think probably what I picked up on is looking for these slicks. I'm not good at it. I know we talked about it last year, and I always key in on the faux slicks. It feel like a couple of my buddies that I fish with, that we just kind of learning the inshore game also. I mean, trying to key in on these slicks, trying to figure them out. I feel like I don't know. It's just hard to figure out if you don't know exactly what you're looking for. And I think that's okay. You just got to figure it out. I mean, I don't know what to look for. I think Bobby's keying on the potholes. The wind riffs are a very big faux slick. Maybe you can help us out with that, man. I know you like to smell on the watermelon.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you, dude. I'm like I'm like a buck and rut whenever I smell a trout slick.
Yeah.
It's absolutely. I tell people all the time, if you could put that stuff in a spray can, I will walk around my house spraying that stuff all over the place. I'm telling you, like nothing makes the hair stand up on my arms,
right.
Arms and legs, like smelling a trout slick. And most of the time, it's when you're running. You know what I mean? You're running along from point A to point B, and you get a whiff, and it literally smells like watermelon, something kind of sweet. And once you smell it a couple of times, it kind of
lock down. Yeah,
you get this kind of muscle memory, And sure enough, most of the time when you smell one, you kind of look upwind, and that's it. It's just the wind. The wind is what's blowing that at you. You look upwind, and you see that slick there, and if you're lucky, you'll be 100 yards away from it,
where you can sneak up to it and capitalize.
You get a whiff of it, you shut down, and then kind of consider where you are and think about what the tide's doing. Is the tide falling? Is the tide coming in? Sure. Which ways should the water be moving? Which way is the wind blowing? And then you kind of got to triangulate the two, where the tide or the current might be pushing the slick, and where the wind is blowing the slick
to find out where the fish actually are. You mean?
That's correct. Yep. Yeah. The fish are going to be both upwind and up current of wherever you see that slick. And sometimes like what Captain Bobby was saying, it's anywhere from as big as a dinner plate to something as big as 30 or 40 feet across. And sometimes it's like when you're in an area, I call them whiffs. You know what I mean? You'll be sitting in an area and you'll see one pop up the size of a dinner plate, what Captain Bobby's talking about, and it'll open up to about 6 or 7, 8 feet long, and then boom, it disappears, and then the water just looks normal again. And that you paying attention to those little fine details can really tell you whether there's some fish there or not. And if you're seeing that activity and you're not getting bit, you need to try something different.
Sure. So I know we've talked about this before in the past, and for the people that we may have gone a little long, but I don't really care because I'm fired up and I like this. We've talked about it before, but for the people that have not heard this before, what the hell is a trout slick? What is causing that slick? Let's go into that, man. Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Everybody's got their own theory on that. That's like them excreting their ammonia or whatever, or it's like the oil from a menhaden or a mullet or something. But my theory is that it's their stomach acid, right? So when they go,
that's what I understand as well. They're gorging themselves.
Yep.
And it's their regurgitation that's causing the slick.
Yep. And I'm going to kind of prove my own theory when I go into this. But when fish feed, when trout feed anyway, they're not like down there nibbling on something, like they flare their gills, open their mouth, and
they're crushing stuff.
And they inhale it,
right.
And they inhale the whole bait down into their stomach. And then they regurgitate some of that water, that they inhaled along with the bait. And that's what I think creates a slick. And the reason I say that is because, several times I've caught a fish, netted him, grabbed him in my hands, and like been holding the fish like where he's upwind of me, and I've gotten the same smell, kind of like I've gotten that same watermelon smell kind of out of their mouth. And if you ever get on the boat with me and you see me do it, if I get a whiff of it, I stick my nose in the fish's mouth, like an open trout's mouth. I can't stand but to do it. I don't know why, but I'll stick my nose in the fish, and I like smell in there.
Gotta make sure.
I love the smell. Like I said, if I could put it in a can, I'd walk around spraying it everywhere.
Yeah.
But so that's why I think that. So that's what's causing the slick, is them inhaling a shrimp or a
so they're feeding. It's a feeding telltale.
That's it. They're eating, and they're just regurgitating some of that water. That's what causing that slick. And
which
like I said,
where the fish are.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, that's not trout are not the only ones that do that. I think catfish do it. I think there's stingrays that do it. I know I've seen redfish slick up before as well. That's something I look for when I go red fishing, like for
tuna for sure. I've seen tuna slicks offshore.
Right. So all fish will excrete a slick. So
cool. I just had to go there, man.
It's exciting. It's really exciting, man.
It's a fun time of year. We're kind of getting fired up a little bit. Kind of getting that time of year, man. Spring, maybe you'll start getting some warmer temperatures here to get the water temperature up a little bit, and we'll see some trout kind of move out of the river systems and start doing the normal pattern for this time of year.
That's right. Well, Butch, I appreciate you having me on as a co-host today. As always, I completely enjoy this 100%.
Always
a lot of fun to get on here, and I always love hearing from our listeners.
Absolutely, man. If people want to book a trip with you, Captain Richard, what's the best way to get in touch with you, buddy?
Man, coldbloodedfishing.com's got all my info on there. Find me on Facebook and Instagram as well, Cold Blooded Fishing. That's probably the best way to find me, social media or on the old website.
Great. That's right. Or just hit us up and we'll get you in contact with them. All right, man. I think that's about it, unless you got anything else to touch on.
No, sir.
Man, all right, folks, that's going to wrap it up this week. That's another great Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report. We appreciate you guys listening to us. Thanks again for all the support of the boat show. That was really fun to see all you guys and shake hands and just hear some feedback. Please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like us to email you the podcast each week, head over to greatdaysoutdoors.com/ASFR, and we'll send you that new show each week, man. You guys keep whacking, and we'll talk to you soon. This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report has been brought to you by the Floribama Fishing Rodeo. The funnest fishing tournament on the Gulf Coast is June 12th through the 14th. Go to fishfloribama.com for tickets and more details. Also brought to you by Foster Contracting, Fortified Roofing Pros. Did you know you could save up to 40% on your homeowner's insurance with a fortified roof? Learn more at fortifiedroofingpros.com or call them at 251-973-9999. Also brought to you by Hilton's Real-Time Navigator, bringing you the highest quality online satellite fishing chart since 2004. Your source for sea temps, altimetry, currents, and watercolor at hiltonsoffshore.com. Also brought to you by MDH Foundation Repair. If your home is experiencing foundation problems, MDH Foundation Repair has the best solutions to fix it right and fix it now and protect your most important asset, your home. Check them out at mdhfoundationrepair.com.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report was brought to you by me, Joe Baya, and National Land Realty. If I can help you in any way with the purchase or sale of land in Alabama or Florida, whether it's timberland, farmland, recreational land like hunting land, or even agricultural land or ranch land like a horse farm, drop me a message at jbaya@nationalland.com. That's JBAYA@nationalland.com.